From the New York Times, I'm Michael Barbaro. This is The Daily. Today, from Iraq to Washington, consequences are mounting after the United States assassinated Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. Helene Cooper on why President Trump chose to do it. It's Monday, January 6th. Helene, what do we know about what led up to this extraordinary decision by the U.S. to take out General Soleimani?
Well, from what we've been able to piece together over the past few days, is all of this started on December 27th.
And just into Fox, an American contractor was just killed in northern Iraq in a rocket attack, and several U.S. troops were also injured.
When an Iranian-backed Shiite militia group launched an attack in Iraq that ended up killing an American contractor.
This is just the latest in a spate of similar rocket attacks, but it's the first time that we're actually seeing U.S. casualties.
Right after this happened, the Pentagon drew up the perennial list of options that the Defense Department is always keeping for the president to respond and decide what he's going to do in order to respond to the attack. Mm-hmm. General Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Defense Secretary Mark Esper both flew to Mar-a-Lago, where President Trump was spending the holidays, and met with him, presenting him this list of how do you respond to what the administration immediately determined was an Iranian-backed attack. One option included striking Iranian ships. Another option was striking perhaps a missile site or two, or looking for a way to launch airstrikes against the Iranian-backed Shiite militias in Iraq that had started this. Mm-hmm. Also on the list was one extreme option, which was to launch an attack, which will really be a targeted assassination, actually, of General Qasem Soleimani, who is the head of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' Quds Force. And it's basically Iran's very muscular yet covert arm of the Iranian military. He's, in essence, the most senior military commander in Iran. Mm-hmm. This is something that the Defense Department often does, is they will put an extreme option on the table because they will always give all options to the president, but it's almost sort of their way of nudging the president toward an option that they prefer. But if you put something that's viewed as a little bit crazy out there, and then you get him to do what you want. President Trump at the time did not choose the nuclear option.
What we did was take a decisive response that makes clear what President Trump has said for months and months and months, which is that we will not stand for the Islamic Republic of Iran to take actions that put American men and women in jeopardy.
He went for, let's launch an attack on the Shiite militia group that launched the attack that killed the American contractor.
The Pentagon says it carried out military strikes in Iraq and Syria, targeting a militia group.
A spokesman for the group says U.S. airstrikes killed at least 25 of their fighters and hurt more than 50 others. This happened in Iraq and Syria yesterday.
So the president, in the end, chooses a pretty measured kind of tit-for-tat response. We were attacked by missiles, so we will attack with missiles.
Exactly, and we'll attack who attacked us.
Got it.
I would add that in our discussion today with the president, we discussed with him other options that are available. And I would note also that we will take additional actions as necessary to ensure that we act in our own self-defense and we deter further bad behavior from militia groups or from Iran.
So then a couple of days later, President Trump is still at Mar-a-Lago and he's watching TV. He's still angry about the initial Shiite militia attack that killed the American contractor. But now he's seeing on TV all of these video images of Iranian-backed protesters attacking the American embassy in Baghdad.
A chaotic scene as protesters stormed the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad today, scaling the walls, forcing the gates, and setting fires inside the heavily guarded compound while diplomats were trapped inside. Some protesters were chanting "Death to America."
And one of the first things that come to his mind is Benghazi and the attack on the American consulate in Benghazi in 2011 that led to the death of 4 Americans, including the ambassador to Libya.
Which was an attack of protesters.
Yes.
On an American, essentially, embassy-like building.
Yes.
How would you have handled that if you were watching in real time Americans under fire at the American consul and an ambassador under fire?
Well, it would have never taken place because I think
President Trump, during his campaign and for years after the initial attack in Benghazi, really went after Hillary Clinton, who was Secretary of State at the time, for not doing enough to prevent that. And this had been a rallying cry during his 2016 campaign. So this was a pretty big deal for him.
Horribly handled, a horrible leadership. She's a horrible leader.
So he's watching now these attacks that are happening under his own watch, and he's thinking about Benghazi, according to his aides that we talked to. He's also thinking about the 1979 attack on the American embassy in Iran that led to the hostage crisis. He's getting more and more angry, according to his aides, and then he calls for his menu of options again. And this time he picks the extreme option.
And so this is the moment when the president calls for the strike on Soleimani, this top general.
That's right. Pentagon officials and administration officials were very surprised because it's one thing to give an option to a president. It's another thing for him to actually do it. They had put that option on the menu for President Trump, not thinking that he would take it, and now he has taken it. So the Defense Department went into action. This is something that the American Defense Department, quite tragically almost, is very good at doing. We know how to kill people. And we have been tracking for more than a decade, almost 2 decades, Qasem Soleimani. So intelligence-wise, we had intelligence reports that he would be flying into Baghdad International Airport that night. There was some question now as the military is setting up just sort of the mechanics of how this strike is going to be conducted. The Pentagon had determined that if he was met, for instance, by Iraqi officials who were friendly towards the United States, they would not go ahead with the strike. If he was not, they would. When General Soleimani's plane landed, he was met by the head of one of Iraq's Iranian-backed Shia militias, who was viewed by the United States as somebody who, I think the phrase they used was a clean party, meaning it's okay to kill him. It's kind of a weird way of saying it.
So a clean party means somebody we don't mind killing.
Exactly. And so they authorized the strike and blew up the 2-car convoy as it was leaving Baghdad International Airport.
In a dramatic escalation of tensions in the Middle East, a U.S. airstrike has killed Iran's most important military commander.
This was a swift, precise military strike that has huge, unpredictable and possibly long-term consequences.
So help us to understand the significance of this decision by the president. Why was this ever an option given to him, even if it was the most extreme option? And why do we think he chose it?
It's hard to explain why President Trump chose to take this option. I think many of us don't understand it ourselves. The administration will tell you that he's a very bad guy, and there's no denying that. The administration will also tell you that he's responsible for the death of hundreds of American troops. That is true as well. The issue, though, that has been true for years and years as American troops have battled some Iranian-backed Shia militias in Iraq. And both Presidents Bush and Obama made the decision not to kill Soleimani because he was a general with the Iranian military. And the United States traditionally does not go around assassinating military generals. The last time we did this was in 1943 during World War II when we took out a Japanese admiral. Iran is a sovereign state. Assassinating one of their officials is pretty much almost the same thing as assassinating the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff or, a high-ranking American official, and then own up to it and take credit for it. It's just not something that is normally often done in broad daylight. But we should also remember that just a month ago, President Trump authorized the killing of Baghdadi, the ISIS head, and he got a lot of very good and deserved credit for that. The administration now today will try to make the equivalent that General Soleimani is the same as Baghdadi, that he's a terrorist, and he has certainly been behind many proxy terrorist acts by Iranian-backed groups in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Iraq, and in Syria. So that has been increasing in recent months as the United States has choked off Iran economically.
We're following multiple breaking stories, including Iran's seizure of at least one oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz today. And there are now conflicting reports about whether a second tanker was seized. Iran is clearly messaging that they hold cards here. But as this continues to go on, what will Iran continue to do?
Well, Brianna, I think it's important that we understand what's motivating Iran right now. Look, since the United States pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal and the administration imposed new sanctions on Iran, those sanctions have absolutely crippled Iran's economy.
That led the Iranian regime to start, as a lot of people at the Pentagon say, acting out. And you saw an increase in attacks from Iran, which has been sort of punching out because it was being punched. And that is one of the reasons that the administration is now given for why this strike was taken. The other big reason, though, leads back to this, which is that the administration is saying that Soleimani was planning additional, even more high-profile attacks on the United States and on American interests and assets in the region, and that this was imminent.
We could see that he was continuing down this path, that there were, in fact, plots that he was working on that were aimed directly at significant harm to American interests throughout the region, not just in Iraq.
You're hearing that from General Milley, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. You heard that on Sunday from Secretary of State Pompeo.
We would have been culpably negligent had we not taken this action. The American people would have said that we weren't doing the right thing to protect and defend American lives.
Which is the argument that Soleimani was about to launch another imminent attack on American interests.
Helene, of all the rationales that we've heard from the Trump administration, this seems to be the most important in terms of explaining why we would do this now, take out Soleimani. But, of course, the U.S. has a very complicated history of using potential threats to American interests as a rationale for actions overseas, especially in the Middle East. So what does your reporting show about how we should be thinking about this explanation of an imminent attack?
That's such an interesting and key question, how we should be thinking about the administration rationale for this attack. Do we believe them or do we not? Our reporting shows that it depends on where you stand. There is no question that General Soleimani has planned and was continuing to plan attacks against the United States through these groups, but that's been going on for more than 15 years. So the question then becomes, why now? The administration says there was something imminent and big that was about to happen. And they appear to be basing that on intelligence reports that they've received about General Soleimani's travels in the last few days leading up to the attack that took his life. But these same intel sources also say that he had been asked by Ayatollah Khamenei, who's the supreme leader of Iran, to come back to Iran, that Khamenei had not authorized anything. He had requested permission and he was not given it, and he was told to come back to Iran. So that then belies the whole question of imminent. Does it become something that's happening in 2 days or something that hasn't even been approved yet? Mm-hmm. So what the administration then will have to answer to the American people, if this leads to war, which it might, is whether or not this assassination was worth it.
We'll be right back.
Support for this podcast and the following message come from E-Trade. Investing your money shouldn't require moving mountains. No matter how much or how little experience you have, E-Trade makes investing simpler. And for a limited time, get $100 when you open a new account with just $5,000. It's all about helping your money work hard for you. For more information, visit etrade.com/learn more. E-Trade Securities, LLC. Member SIPC.